Constantine supported the separation of the date of Easter from the Jewish Passover, stating in his letter after the First Council of Nicaea, which had already decided the matter, "It appeared an unworthy thing that in the celebration of this most holy feast we should follow the practice of the Jews, who have impiously defiled their hands with enormous sin, and are, therefore, deservedly afflicted with blindness of soul. Let us then have nothing in common with the detestable Jewish crowd, for we have received from our Savior a different way." In the following series, Chuck and Vickie Tatum will expose the whole story of how a small group of men were able to subvert the teaching of Yeshua, his disciples, and create a brand new religious organization called Christianity.
Shalom, everyone. Welcome to the program. Hope you're having a blessed day.
Shalom from me too, and I just want to let you know that I will be reading a lot from my script this time because this program is just too important for me to take the chance of making any mistakes. So I hope that's okay with you.
Well, I hope so, because I'm going to do the same thing. We believe the information that we're going to present in this program, folks, is you're going to get a new perspective on the kind of information that we're going to share today. We're going to come at it from somewhat of a historical perspective, giving you a little bit of in-depth information. And it's actually a series. This is the first episode. We're going to have at least one more, maybe two more episodes. So we want you to stay with us until the end of this video to really catch the gist of it. And then especially tune into the next episode, because we're going to do some deep diving, Vickie.
Yes, we are. And it is going to blow your mind, some of the things we're going to be able to tell you.
Right. But first, we got to kind of lay a little bit of groundwork.
Yes.
So we've entitled this series, The Unbiased History of the Emperor Constantine and the Council of Nicaea. These are familiar terms with you. I'm sure you've heard about them, off and on in various capacities. But we're going to try to dig a little bit deeper into some of the background that took place in the very early days of our faith walk. And going back, our program is Cry Loud, Spare Not. That's what we're doing. We're talking about embracing our Hebrew heritage. And that's what it is. So the early days are this. Let's go back to the very beginning. And that's where we had the earliest followers of Yeshua. These were people who were rooted and grounded in their Hebrew heritage. Now, before there was Constantine, of course, there was something called the Way. And this occurred between the year 30 AD and around 306 AD. This is the period of time that we're talking about right now.
When we talk about the Way, we're talking about a movement that was entirely Jewish in its origin. They kept Sabbath, the Moedim, which are the commandments, which we mostly call the instructions from Yehovah. They kept the biblical feast, and they observed Jehovah's dietary laws. There was no term called Christianity, not in that time, not for over 300 years was that title ever used minimally at the time, with a totally different meaning, I think Chuck will tell you about.
Where do we get the phrase followers of the way? Where does that come into? Well, it comes in the book of Acts. Actually, we read about it in Acts chapter 9, verse 2, chapter 19, verse 9, chapter 23, chapter 24, verses 14 through 22. This entire movement was all about Jehovah's Torah. It was simply a continuation of the information and the prophecies that had been laid out over centuries. All these things that were happening at that particular time, the prophets had foretold. And now it was happening. And as a result of that, what was taking place was that the early apostles, they believed that they were living in this renewed covenant that was spoken about in the scriptures, particularly in the book of Jeremiah. And even the early Gentile believers who were being grafted into Israel. And let me explain that, because Paul says you are grafted into the olive tree. He says that in Romans 11:17. He's not talking about being grafted physically into the nation of Israel or even spiritually. He's talking about being grafted into Israel's covenant. More specifically, he's referring to being brought back into Israel's covenant. And that's something that we're not going to delve into that right now, but that's something that we need to discuss because that's very critical, very important. But what that means is that these early believers, Jews and Gentiles, knew that they were not stepping into some sort of new religion. In fact, for the first 100 years, faith in Yeshua was simply a Hebrew movement. It was encapsulated and within Judaism, which was a sect like the Sadducees, the Essenes, the Pharisees. The way was simply considered a sect, a Jewish sect, and it was embraced by both Jews and Gentiles.
The real story of how their Hebrew heritage began to be suppressed. Jews and Gentiles met together in synagogues and in homes to study and learn from the apostles, and they shared their teachings. Gentile believers were joining the way rapidly. Many of the Gentile leaders who had little to no understanding of Jehovah's Torah began to distance the movement from its original Hebrew identity, and very early on, anti-Jewish sentiment started influencing the doctrines.
Exactly, that's right. Even the Apostle Paul, of course, Paul was a Hebrew. He's so often misunderstood by Christians today. I believe a question that we should ask ourselves, and we really should think about this. Their religious leaders in the early days who twisted Paul's letters in order to serve a non-Hebrew agenda. Of course, my take on it would be, of course they were. They did it because when you really read Paul's letters and you think in terms of he's coming from a Torah perspective, you realize that, what he's saying has nothing to do with a new religion.
And did you know that some of the Council of Nicaea didn't include all the books of Paul simply because they didn't fit in where they wanted it to go? So they said, we're not sure these books were by him, so that they could eliminate those that went in the original direction.
Nothing Jewish was to be considered, right?
It did seem that way. It was certainly a melting down of the message. Constantine became emperor of the Roman Empire in 306 AD. He sought to unify the empire, and religion was a tool, a way to stabilize power. But his decision would have far-reaching spiritual consequences, and there are still consequences today because of that terrible change that came about at that time.
Well, let's start with the laws that Constantine enacted. He came to power in 306 AD, and right off the bat in 315, he began to issue very harsh decrees that limited Jewish influence over new converts. In other words, they did not want anything to do with Jewish traditions, customs, the Torah, the feast, anything to do that the Jews were doing at the time. This was just totally, they didn't want it. It just was not to be had. And so these were very harsh edicts and decrees that Constantine issued. Then in 321, March the 7th, we now know that he passed the famous Sunday law, declaring that the venerable day of the sun would be a day of rest. In other words, he basically just did away with God's Sabbath. He said we don't need it, and he laid it out on a pagan holiday, the day of the sun. That's where we get Sunday. The Romans, Vickie, they were a pagan empire. They worshiped many, many gods. They had all kinds of feasts and festivals to these gods, and Sunday was a big one. That was one of their biggies. And there was a need, both politically and religiously, to try to appease the non-believers with the new believers. And so a lot went on, but nevertheless, he goes and he issues this decree. And so now we have Sunday, now it's called the Lord's Day, built on a pagan day. It's not coming from the Bible, it's coming from historical data. It's something you can look up for yourself.
Absolutely. His historical documents certainly confirm all this information we're giving you today with the scriptures also. And while the law may sound like a civil measure, it carried spiritual weight. Sabbath observance was effectively undermined for believers in Roman society. He even exempted farmers so they could tend the fields. A very calculative move, I might say.
Exactly.
God even
Influence.
told us there was to be a Sabbath
For everybody.
for farmers.
Well, yeah, for the land. The land is even supposed to have a day of rest.
Right.
What's the result of that? We're talking about the Hebrew heritage of the way. What we're talking about is being rewritten subtly at first, then more overtly. Early believers, they resisted, of course, but the influence and the power of the empire was too great, and they simply couldn't do it. So Jews and Gentiles who had been living together, studying together, worshiping together, evangelizing together, whatever the case might be, they were now being pulled apart. So then in 325, here's what Constantine did. We see his letter attacking the Jewish timing of Passover. And this wasn't about worship. It was about distinguishing the empire's faith from its Jewish roots. In other words, Passover is the first of the spring feast in the Hebrew calendar. And they didn't want anything to do with it. So they instituted Easter. And actually the council was the one that did this. And Constantine simply, he came along and approved it. He agreed with it, that Easter, which was fashioned after, again, a fertility goddess with several different names throughout the centuries, would replace the Hebrew Passover. So now we have another festival. We have another set-apart day, so to speak, that's been offered up to foreign gods. I mean, this Easter totally goes. If Sabbath doesn't go against God's word, I don't know what does. But Easter especially is something that is like an abomination to God. I mean, this right there should
the
tell.
egg is the fertility god,
rabbit, the
and the
chickens.
rabbit, and
I mean,
it's just totally distorted.
it's crazy.
And it's called a Christian holy day.
So let me quickly point.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Point this
I
out.
got off
Okay.
track, but that one bothers
Well,
me.
we use the word Christian. In Greek, that's Christianos. Okay? And it appears only 3 times in the New Testament. Believe it or not, the word Christian appears 3 times in the New Testament. You'll find it in Acts chapter 11, 26, Acts 26, verse 28, 1 Peter 4, 16. And originally, this is what it meant: Messiah followers. Or it was used by outsiders, those outside the way, as a nickname for people in the way, okay? And it was not a structured religious system. It didn't mean anything like that. So it didn't have anything to do with a believer. For example, we might say a Romanized religious believer. That would be what would say be a Christian, okay? But the word Christian at that time, during this time, had nothing to do with it. And the word Christianity, as an institutional religion, it appears in literature by the late 2nd century. That's long after the apostles, and it really takes shape only in the 4th century under Constantine. This is where it began to really blossom out. It's where you got all the bishops and all the church leaders and these type of things. And these are things that we're going to go into in detail in our next episode. So we hope you'll be tuning into this.
Document it and prove them historical.
We got, there's names and attitudes and all kinds of things that we're going to be bringing to your attention. So I don't think you want to miss that. But anyway.
Well, the apostolic movement was not Christianity. It was the way, rooted fully in Hebrew covenant life. Constantine's era is where the separation occurs. Constantine's empire created, listen to this, a new religious structure, a clergy class, Sunday as the legal worship days, Easter separated from Passover, anti-Jewish restrictions, laws against Hebrew customs, a non Torah identity. This is where something truly called Christianity emerges from a Roman-sponsored religion separate from the Hebrew heritage of Yeshua's followers. This sets the stage for the Council of Nicaea, where powerful bishops would meet under imperial authority to codify these changes.
And that's the beginning. That's Constantine's role in this is simply one of agreeing to everything. It's the bishops who are powerful men. They have a lot of influence. We're going to discuss that in our next episode. But this is how all of this came to be. The things that we know today when we refer to Christianity, Christians and Christianity, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. I mean, it's not God's way. God did not approve any of this. God did not institute any of this.
This was an amazing deception, and it's taught in all the every religion. And that's one thing we would like to see. We would like to see leaders of churches and denominations perhaps listen to this program, because this has been so hidden. We've been deceived and distorted and lied to, if you will. The portion that we were in church for 20, 25 years, something like that. And we never heard anything like this. Nothing, nada, zip. We mostly heard Paul's letters. That was just about the best days.
And even those are distorted in most cases. So there's just a lot to this. We're just kind of giving you the basic intro to this particular series called the Unbiased History of the Emperor Constantine and the Council of Nicaea, because it's those councils that took place from that point, and then several more took place, Vickie, over a number of years, that put in place what believers believe today. I guess that's the best way for me to put it. This is what solidified what we think and we talk about and we believe. And so much of it is just distortion. So much of it is just man-made. I mean, when you get right down to it, it's man-made.
Excuse me, baby. If you're like we are and were and still are, you're hungry for truth and you don't want man-made things. You want to know when the end of your time comes that you are obeying God to the best of your ability, but you have to know things. And you can't just say, oh, this is the one I believe and I'm not going to listen to anything else. You may want to rethink that before you stand before the Lord. If you do it deliberately, I say it could be in danger of rebellion, but most of it is done out of having never heard it, because it has been so deeply, deeply hidden from the church today.
We're looking at 1,700 years of this kind of teaching, and that's hard to undo. It's hard to unpack, especially when you're introducing what appears to be new concepts or new information.
It's not. It's old
really,
concepts.
It's not really new. It goes all the way back to the very beginning of God's creation. So we're not presenting anything new in that sense. We're simply trying to lay out the groundwork of where our beliefs come from today and what so many Christians believe. And hey, we were right in there at the very beginning.
And we received a lot. But after a while, we begin to sense and feel that there's something's not connecting here. We need to get some things filled in. And we begin to search.
It'll unfold. So anyway, we want you to join us for our next episode. We're going to be talking about the Council of Nicaea and the men who decided about all these things, all the
You're going to call their names.
There's going to be some names. There's going to be some names mentioned out.
Yeah.
We have to say this right up front. A lot of this information is not in complete English translations. A lot of it is fragmented. A lot of it has been derived over the ages, over the centuries, from different church fathers and other sources of information. So we want to encourage you as we present this kind of information to you. Please do your own research on it. Go in and you can Google it, go to ChatGPT. There's a lot of different applications that you can find this information. What we want to do is encourage you to look for it, to see for yourself.
Right.
Don't just take our word for it, but see for yourself. But anyway, we're going to uncover the bishops who attended these councils, the heated debates that they had, and the doctrines that would define our Christian faith for centuries, including today. So we hope you will like this video, subscribe, comment, and share. We really would appreciate any comments that you have on it. That really helps us out. Subscribing, of course, helps us out. All of it.
The more subscriptions we get, the further they're going to put us out. It doesn't cost a thing. It's so easy just to go, oops, subscribe. No one's going to ever bother you. It's no charge, but it means everything to us. It opens the door to getting out further. And if you'll subscribe, we'd like to ask you to make comments because we want to hear your response to this so that we can do programs to address the questions and understandings of things that you may have for us. We'd be happy to do that. Share it with someone else that you think would be interested. Like Chuck said, that's so important to us.
All right. Till next time, shalom.
Shalom.
Jehovah bless you and keep you. Jehovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Jehovah turn to you, lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Shalom, shalom.